Welcome to Digital Identities. This movie addresses questions like, what is identity? Where does identity construction happen? Do we have a core identity, or are we always already fragmented? How do modern notions of identity and identity construction differ from postmodern notions of identity construction? And what do some teacher scholars have to say about identity in digital spaces? If we're talking about modernity, we're talking about a particular time period and a set of styles and approaches to the world typical of that time. People have made all sorts of arguments about when modernity began and when postmodernity began, or even if we can separate our approaches to the world in these two categories. Essentially, when we're talking about modernism, we're talking about the time period from the 18th century to the 20th century, a time marked by rapid scientific and technological change. I think one of the best quotes we can associate with modernity comes from Descartes. I think, therefore I am. This is a pretty skinny notion of identity and one wrapped around a single, core, cohesive identity. Mr. Keaty, a graphic design theorist, helps us to get our heads around the difference between modern and modern. Modern really means contemporary. Modern is related to modernity, and modernism means a particular way of seeing the world and of understanding identity. John Trimber, a rhetoric scholar, calls attention to the fact that there's no specific identifiable break, no moment where we said, all right, let's be postmodernist now. He situates modernism as always connected to postmodernism. He also notes that there were a series of cultural shifts that happened, and those we can pinpoint. Laurel Harper, another graphic design theorist, talks about our world, well, the Western world, around 1930. And she talks about one of these important moments. She describes the chaotic social, political, cultural, and economic climate. A world war had been fought, and soon there were rumblings of another one on the horizon. Many countries were suffering a financial depression. At the same time, electricity was fast becoming a necessity rather than a luxury. Automobiles, aircraft, and trains made it easy to move people and products across the world. Technology was rapidly advancing, and as a result, industries were spreading their wings globally. Many theorists anchor contemporary approaches to politics and culture and identity to France in 1968, whereas a series of protests transformed the Western world and introduced many of us to the work of folks like Michel Foucault, Jean Baudrillard, and Louis Althusser. Jean-Francois Lyotard describes postmodernism as a condition, one created by a dissolution of meta-narratives. A meta-narrative is a grand, overarching account, a way of identifying the way things are and the way things should be. Postmodern approaches to the world, however, question these grand narratives and argue that they're too narrow to describe the true rich diversity of experience. Postmodern approaches argue that meta-narratives act ideologically to legitimize certain views of the world and to try to enforce a capital T truth rather than multiple little t truths. So what does postmodernism have to do with how we might think about identity, specifically digital identity? Multiplicity and plurality are key to postmodernist notions of self, and I would argue that digital spaces are absolutely ripe for the display of multiple hybrid identities. We'll get to that more in a moment. A great example of how postmodern thought ruptured previous notions of identity has to do with its influence on feminism. Second-wave feminism was characterized by identity politics and a focus on a sense of being united merely because of shared sex. Third-wave cyber-feminism or postmodern feminism, though, says things are much more complicated, and it's important not to erase those complications. Okay, by now you might be hungry for specific examples, and here's one, Orlan. Orlan is a performance artist who's been doing amazing things with technology, specifically body technologies and plastic surgery. She's had silicone implants embedded in her forehead. She's digitally and live streamed her plastic surgeries as performance art. In her work, she approaches the body as infinitely malleable. Another example, one of my favorites, is the performance artist Guillermo Gomez Peña. His work is fantastically rich, and he works across traditional, tactile, and digital media. His work focuses on issues of cultural hybridity, primarily by playing with cultural stereotypes, juxtaposing images of cultural stereotypes to make specific arguments about cultural hybridity. In 1997, Gomez Peña published The Virtual Barrio, and in it he argued the mythology goes like this: Mexicans, and by extension other Latinos, can't handle technology. Caught between a pre-industrial past and an imposed modernity, we continue to be manual beings, imaginative artisans, but not technicians. Our understanding of the world is strictly political, poetic, or metaphysical, but certainly not scientific or technological. Furthermore, we're perceived as sentimentalist and passionate creatures, meaning irrational. And when we decide to step out of our anthropological realm and utilize high technology in our art, we're meant to naively repeat what other cultures, mainly Anglos and Europeans, have already done, and done much better. And he continues to argue that what cyber immigrants desire is, and this is where he moves into manifesto mode, to politicize the debate, to remap the hegemonic cartography of cyberspace, to develop a multi-centric theoretical understanding of the cultural, political, and aesthetic possibilities of new technologies, to exchange a different sort of information, and to hopefully do all this with humor, inventiveness, and intelligence. Chicano artists in particular want to brownify virtual space, to Spanglishize the net, and infect the lingua franca. Lisa Nakamura, in a piece that we read for this week, argued about the ways in which people engage in identity play in digital spaces. This has been actually celebrated by a lot of scholars, but few have done what Nakamura does, and that's critically approach the ways people try on and often then discard ethnic identities. Further, she talks about the disorienting effects this has on people of color in cyberspace. Nakamura continues by offering an absolutely fantastic toolbox of terms through which we can understand and analyze the identity work going on in digital spaces, including the notion of cyber images, cyber types, arguments about post-body ideology, identity prostheses, strategic affinity, a notion that she borrowed from Haraway and Gayatri Spivak, identity after images, identity tourism, remastered stereotypes, cosmetic multiculturalism, and digital disidentification. Okay, heavy stuff, I know, but absolutely important tools to help us understand digital identity work in online spaces. So let's put this into practice. What we're going to do next is head back to the Week 5 folder on Angel and back into the Module 8 folder. In that folder, there's a link to a prompt and a set of websites. The websites of authors we've read for class. What I'd like to ask you guys to do is take a look at their sites and explore, critique, speculate as to what sort of identity work you see going on there on these websites of these scholars, researchers, and teachers. Then, after that, post some comments, post some ideas in the discussion forum within the Module 8 folder. And then we're going to move into Module 9, which is going to have us pondering our own digital representations and what they mean to us as teachers.